do today, first of all, as usual, I'm gonna present the latest and greatest within Power BI. Afterwards, we invited Anthony and Karim. They were the winner of the first Power BI championship, and they're gonna tell us a little bit their road to success, what they did, how the report looked like, how they built it. So I'm really looking forward to it to hear from the best of the best. And lastly, we're gonna share some best practices, tips and tricks, meaning Dennis and I, because especially myself, I saw a lot of reports, obviously, in the championship, and I saw a lot of, I wouldn't call it mistakes, but I would say not following best practices. And therefore, we decided to have a session about it to keep you guys also in the loop with some best practices that you can follow and probably improve your reports and have a little bit an easier life. As usual, this community is across Switzerland. Let's say we have another one hosted in Geneva. Over there, it's led by Anne Furundarena. If you're interested in the community over there, feel free to reach out to her. I hyperlinked her email address in the slides. Same goes for St. Gallen. They have the next meetup planned on the 6th of September, and Rene Lechner is your contact over there. And we have a new meetup location, which is Basel. This is led purely by Dennis in this case. He also already planned a second one on the 26th of September. If you're interested in having a speech or joining, feel free to reach out to Dennis. Dennis, I know you're here. Anything else you wish to add?
No, we're also looking for speakers. We're still looking for speakers. So if you want a session or a quick session, if you have only half an hour or something, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm always happy to see other or new faces.
Cool. And lastly, overview Teams. If you're interested in joining Teams, feel free to do so. You can request it through the first link over here. It's a forms where you have to provide your name, full name, and email address, and then you have to agree that you or that I can use your email address and add you to Teams. I promise no advertisement behind, no marketing behind. It's really just GDPR stuff, meaning that if you provide me your email address and I add you to the Teams, everyone who is in the Teams can also see your email address. That's the reason why I have to ask for it. But once you are added to it, you can go to your browser. I would recommend through the browser, not through the app, because it's a little bit easier to handle it. You can change then the tenant to Microsoft Guest, and in there you will find the Power BI Teams. Let me quickly show that live. So what I mean is once you go to teams.microsoft.com, log in, you can go on the top right over here, select it, and then choose Microsoft Guest. This is the tenant you have to choose to switch. And once you switched, this will take a few seconds, probably half a minute. Once you're there, on the left-hand side, you have here Teams. And if you open it, and if that's the only Teams you're invited from the Microsoft side, you will find the Power BI user group. And in there, in the General tab, you'll find everything you need. You see, we're right now in a call, recording. That's the button for it or the icon for it. And in the General tab, at the top, you can find all kind of posts, meaning feel free to post also questions and ask the community if you're struggling somewhere. I love to see it as interactive as possible. In the files section, you can find all files, meaning recordings and the slides that we provide and everything that has to do. Yeah, you see if I click on it, every meetup has one specific folder, and in the folder itself, let's go for the July one, for example, you will find always the recording together with the slides. And if you have external speakers, I always ask to share the slides as well. Lastly, what we have is upcoming events. So you can see a calendar with all the events, but it's always the first Thursday of the month from 4 to 6 p.m. Swiss time, some FAQ and stuff like that. But I think the files and posts are the most important tabs. Any questions to that?
All clear.
I take that as a no. Probably as a last hint, if you request to join through forms, this will trigger a flow in the backend and I will have to add you. This can take probably a few hours. I always check it after the meetup to add you as quick as possible. All right, then what's new in Power BI? Today I have only 4 things that we're gonna discuss because I want to give more time for Karim and Anthony and as well for the best practices at the end. So let's start away with the first metric visual update. As a reminder, metric previously it was called goals, now metric. And we updated the visual, meaning you do not have to visualize now the whole scorecard anymore. You can visualize also just one specific metric if you wish to do so. In July, it's not available in the desktop. It's only through service available, but it will be with the desktop version of August available. I already have it, so I could definitely confirm that we have it in the August version. 2 more things which I'm going to show as well is you can now move or copy a scorecard from one workspace to another. And if you wish, you can also follow a metric which will pin it on your scorecard, and it's a little bit easier than to follow. I will show that live, then it's a little bit easier. So first of all, let me then show you the new visual. So I'm here in Power BI Desktop. If I click the scorecard visual, here it is, with the metric visual called, I can say add a metric now. And once I select it, you see I have now 2 selections. One is really just a specific metric or the metric list, so the scorecard as a whole. In my case, I just go for the metric one. So I say, yes, this is it. And what I can do is I can browse for an existing one, or I can create a new one if I wish to do so. Let's just create a, or no, let's browse for a new, for an existing one. Then it opens up the scorecards I have access to. In this case, I have 2. I just go for the demo scorecard. And in there, I can now choose a metric I wish to track. So I don't know, let's go for the total revenue one. I say add to report. And there we are. Right now, it's just a dot. The thing is, it's my demo environment. I do not have any kind of history or check-ins and so on. But if you would do that, obviously you would also have then a nice line chart, really the history of the whole metric, and you can really follow it. The beauty of it is it's in the small details. Let me show that. It's over here, you have the status of the metric, and you have also the due date. So everything really in one visual. And what you can do as well is from the visual itself, if you click this little button here, you do that, you will see then the whole scorecard. And on this specific metric, you can then perform check-ins. You can see the history. So everything like in the Power BI service or with like previously with the whole scorecard visual. Any questions to that? All right, doesn't look like. Then let me switch quickly to Power BI service. Let me go to my demo workspace. In here is my scorecard, if I remember. Here it is. And I mentioned you can now copy or move your scorecard. This is pretty easy doable just by selecting the scorecard in your workspace, as I did right now. On the top, through File, you see now you have Move Scorecard, or you can say Copy Scorecard. If I say, for example, Copy, I can select in which workspace I wish to copy. So let's go with Meetup Switzerland one. I can even say I wish to include my check-in history. This makes sense if you wish to have it further. If you say you perform a new scorecard for a new fiscal year, for example, you do not have to include the check-in history and you start, let's say, from scratch for this specific date. In my case, I don't wish to include history. I just say continue and takes a few seconds as you see. And once done, you can even open it in your new workspace. There you go, with the same goals and so on. And as you see, we are in the Power BI Meetup Switzerland workspace right now. Pretty obvious. Questions to that?
Are you able to copy a particular goal doing workspaces?
No, I haven't seen that you can do so. Right now, it's purely a whole scorecard copying from one to another workspace. I guess if you wish the same metric, you would need to recreate it on your own in the new scorecard. Further questions? All right, then the last thing, it's the follow a specific metric. If I hover over a metric, you see here now a new icon. The label says as well, follow metric. If I click that, it's already marked as following. I can unfollow it by clicking it again. And as you see, it didn't happen a lot right now, but if I go on the left-hand side now to metrics, I have here a following tab. And in this following tab, I can see now I'm not sure if it's this one or this one, but I can see now all the metrics that I'm following at one place. And this is a little bit easier because it's across workspaces and across scorecards. Questions to that? Looks like I'm super clear. Oh yes, please.
What does it mean to follow? Is it just kind of like favorite metric, the same as the favorite report, or you are actually getting some notifications?
If you're following it, if you're following it, I'm not 100% sure. I think you will also receive notification in Teams if the metric will be updated. I would need to check that. Give me a sec. I think it's in the block here. We can check that live. Scorecard, create, move copy, follow metrics.
Yeah, it's written.
Yeah, you will click a notification. Yes, so you will get the notification once the metric is updated because you're following it. All right. If no further questions, I would move on with the next one. Here is not much to say. This is more an information, especially interesting for partners who are creating visuals to what, like the seller way to optimize experience with managing, enforcing, and licensing visuals in Microsoft. We are now introducing the e-commerce transactability. What it means at the end is, for example, if you go with Zebra BI or Power On or whatever kind of visual, as a customer, you always have to go to the partner itself, so outside of the Microsoft eco environment, let's say, to purchase it, to license it, and so on. And with this new update, this means that the partner can really manage the licenses through the same environment, through the same Microsoft ecosystem as the customer has access to. Meaning, as a customer, I can go add my visual. I can say, yes, I want to purchase it. I do not have to leave Power BI or the Microsoft website. It's everything built in there, so it's a little bit easier. Pros for customer, it's experience, much easier. Pros for partners. If you go this way, you have a partner portal where you can really track all the licenses, what kind of companies users has licensed your visual. We provided as well a how-to guide which you can follow if you wish to do so through this link.
But does it mean that for purchasing we can do it through Microsoft?
It's indirectly through Microsoft. Let's say we just provide a marketplace for it, and through this marketplace you can purchase it. That's the thing. And yeah, as mentioned, the biggest advantage is you do not have to go outside of the Microsoft world anymore. It's really everything within Power BI. I mean, probably I can show that if I go and say I wish to get more visuals.
In the case of Zebra BI, for example, I have to go through a reseller to buy the
Yes.
licenses. And I would like to shut it, of course.
Yes, and this is now different because download a sample. Zebra BI is probably not involved right now. Give me a sec. I'm sure I saw that, but I have to check which visual it was. We have some, where is it? Where is it? I think Oquis visual was it? Bullet chart. Let's go with the bullet chart. Power BI. Here, bullet chart by Oquis. This one, this is what I tested. So if you see, if I go now and say add, I have that option as well, buy now, instead of just add. And if I go buy now, it will open up the app stores of Microsoft. I am logged in as with my demo account. In there, I can see the different kind of prices, monthly prices per user and so on, depending always on the visual, obviously. And I can just say, yes, this is what I wish. I can choose my price, add it, and this is it. If I'm not wrong, like here, buy now. Okay.
You are talking for available on the cloud.
Sorry, can you say that again?
This solution works when you want to buy the license and use it on cloud, not for on-premise.
Yes. No, this is not available for on-prem. This is purely cloud. Yes. All right. But is the concept more or less clear? Any questions to that? All right, I take that as a yes. As mentioned, it's more an informal update. Let's go to the next one. Azure Services Server properties are now in public preview within Power BI. This is now a little bit more technical, meaning, or for those who don't know, Microsoft tries to go the way that everything that Azure Analyze Services offers you will also be included in Power BI Premium. And we're moving more and more into this direction. We saw that, for example, we have perspectives, we have languages, we have the XML endpoint, and so on and so on. And this is an additional feature going this path. What it means is you can now have these properties through the general property section, which you can set up. For example, the commit timeout or the server timeout and so on. I tested it this morning. It works only with Power BI Premium and Power BI Embedded. It does not work with Power BI Premium per user because Premium per user is still like a service license and not a dedicated capacity. That's the reason why you cannot do those settings. To show you how it works, here is a guide which you can follow, but let me show that quickly as well. If I switch here to Power BI, if I turn on quickly my embedded instance, this will take a few seconds. Let's run. It will run in a few seconds. Once it's running, my workspace will available. And what I do is, as you see, in the settings itself, it's an embedded one, and I choose here the workspace connection. So I'm just gonna copy it. Copy. I go to SQL Server Management Studio, say connect to an analyze services, and paste my my connection string. I have to log in with my universal with MFA, so AAD universal with MFA. In Microsoft case, provide my email address, say connect. I hope the embedded is already there. Looks like it is. Once there, I can I can right click on it. I can go to on the database, obviously. No, sorry. One more time. Properties, here it is. In the properties, I can go to general, and in there you see I have now all the different properties that I can set. I know it's a little bit technical, but as mentioned, it's possible, especially for those who are interested in moving from AAS to Power BI Premium. This is one more reason to do so if your requirements allows it. Any questions to that? All right, then let's go with the last update. We introduced a new DAX function called network days. I like it very much because with one DAX measure or DAX statement, you can now really calculate the net working days between two dates. So for example, I can say 1st of October and last day of October and calculate all the net working days between, so exclude Saturday and Sunday, and it will do so for me. What I can also do is I can configure at which day the weekend should start. In the screen here in my code itself, let me open it. You see here weekend start 7. This is the 7th day. This means Friday. And if you do 7, this means Friday and Saturday will be the weekend. If I would do 6, then Thursday and Friday would be the weekend. And lastly, you can also add holidays, meaning if in my example, I go from the 1st of October till the end of October, or mostly the end of October, but I exclude through a holiday table 2 days. And this will be also considered in the calculation. I see somebody raised a hand previously. I think it was Georg. Was there a question?
No. I wanted to applause and I typed.
All right.
I got the wrong reaction.
All right. Then let me just quickly show that as well in Power BI, how that looks like. I prepared a small DAX statement. So first of all, let me delete that. So, and what I have is, if I come on, my KPI here, there we go. So what I do is following. I say from 1st of October till the 3rd of October, please calculate all networking days. And you see it's just networking days, start date, this is this parameter, end date, this is this parameter. And to show that as well, you can even specify your date in this way or in this way. The networking days will consider it in both ways. If I do so, you still have 20 working days in between the 1st of October and the 30th of October. If I go further and say, okay, the weekend shouldn't start at Saturday, it should now start at, for example, Friday, I can go and say the weekend start, I include that as an additional option, hit enter, and now Friday is my weekend day, and therefore I have to work Sundays, and because we have one Sunday more, I have 21 working days. And lastly, if I wish to include holidays, this could be obviously an external table or whatever. In my case, I just created a simple table within DAX. I add that as an additional option. I say holidays now, hit enter, and instead of 21, I should receive 19. There we are, because we have now 2 holidays in this month and therefore 2 less days to work, and it's 19 at the end. Questions to that? Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Shiv. My question is, can I add this to a calculated column, or would this just be a measure?
This is right now just a measure, if I'm not wrong. I'm not sure if you can do a calculated column as well. Haven't tested that.
Yeah. Okay. Because I have a table with a start and an end date. So I was wondering if I can use this as, because I'm using functions now to do that calculation today.
Okay. I mean, feel free to test it and let us know.
Okay. Let me try and destroy it.
Okay. Any further questions?
Is it available for everyone or just for cloud?
I would say cloud. I don't think this is report server available right now. I haven't seen it in the announcement that we specify for who, but usually if you do not specify it, especially for report server, it's always, let's say, only service.
Yeah, so Anthony just got a bit more excited about this function, and then I stopped his excitement.
Yeah. Anything else? Any further questions? All right, then. As usual, if you wish to keep up to date, I provided 2 links. First one is a report, which is provided from Alex Power. He is a Power BI product group member. And in there, you can always see what kind of features has been planned for what kind of month. Is it general available, public preview, or is it released? And a link to the documentation is also included. Or if you like to read docs, you can always go to the Power Platform release plan to check the latest documentation. And with that, I'm very happy to welcome all Power BI Championship winners of this year, Anthony and Karim. Happy to have you. So feel free to amaze us how your success to road looked like.
Yes, with pleasure. Okay, I'll try to share. And then we'll probably stop the camera because we have just one laptop. It's going to be a bit difficult.
Sure, no issue at all.
Okay. So, do you see our screen?
Yeah.
Right. So I'll give the word to Anthony.
Yes, thank you, Karim. So yeah, we wanted to thanks again Microsoft for giving us the opportunity to show the work we did for the championship, and we're really hoping the challenge will be up again next year. So basically, we quickly gonna start by presenting ourselves. So maybe Karim, you can start.
So yeah, as Christian also showed it on the slide, I'm working for the SIGPA as a business data specialist, working mainly with Power BI reporting and some other capabilities of Power Platform. So we are testing some use cases of Power Platform, Power Automate, Power Apps, and it's really kind of cool how the whole platform is well integrated and also well integrated with the other Microsoft apps. So yeah, I'm working with Power BI for 3 years now, I think, almost full time, except some small projects at work that are not touching it.
And for myself, my name is Anthony Haeberli, and I have nothing to do with BI normally because I'm a watchmaker. And I'm actually a watchmaker analyst, and I'm doing a lot of stat on Excel on VBA. But then I met Karim like 3 years ago, and he showed me Power BI, and it was a life-changing event for me because I am now using Power BI almost every day, and I'm managing about 30 dashboards for the production line on the certification line before the watch is delivered to the customer. So yeah, Power BI became a big part of my work actually now. Unfortunately, we only have Power BI report server, so I'm missing a lot of the capabilities. But I'm hoping that may change one day. So yeah. So we quickly gonna review what we're planning to present you today. So I'm gonna start by presenting you the creative process that we had with Karim. Then Karim will talk a little bit more about the Power Query and the data model side. I will jump in and talk about the style, and Karim will end the whole thing with DAX and the Power Automate that we included into our dashboard. So the creative process. So for those that participate to the event, we got presented 2 data sets. Basically, the first one was about the rental price of the different cantons. in Switzerland, and the second one was basically just the API of the WHO website. There is a lot of data about health. We first wanted to go with the rental dataset, but when we saw that it was only on the continental level, we got a little bit disappointed on it was more interesting for us to go with the GHO website. But then we went on the GHO website. There is actually quite a lot of data sets, and they are all kind of like meaningful. So it was kind of hard to choose as well. One of the main things that was important to us is that we took this contest as an opportunity to use a map in our daily work. We both work for plants where we manufacture things, and there is not so much use for a map. So that was the right opportunity for us. So as soon as we knew that, we kind of looked for a team where most of the countries are covered, because if you use a world map and half the countries are empty, it's kind of like pointless. So we saw this team about the alcohol, and there is actually a lot of data set here. So there is a lot of data, and actually most of the countries were covered, and we were very pleased. But then, since there is so many data sets, it was a little bit overwhelming. So the first thing we did was to actually list all the data sets available. So as you can see here, there is 158 data sets in total. Yeah, obviously we couldn't include all of them, so we had to make some choice. So yeah, we listed them, and we tried to categorize them in different categories. Here you can see, for example, consequences, or like prevention, fighting, understanding, etc. So we try to categorize all those data sets under different categories. And ultimately, we only kept a few of them. So if I filter here, at the end, we only kept 26 data sets with the main one, which is the alcohol consumption per capita in pure alcohol. So yeah, we had our data set at this point, and we were just missing the story. So we wanted to have a story that was kind of like making sense. And our thought process was that we wanted to present the worldwide overview of the alcohol consumption, and maybe people would like to then compare different countries and compare themselves, to give a little bit more meaning to our dashboard. Ultimately, we wanted to deliver a prevention message. So yeah, that's it for the creative process. Now Karim will maybe present you a little bit more about the Power Query side. And I'm gonna myself send you the link to our dashboard, so maybe you can look at it, and maybe a question will arise. So I'll give it to you, Karim.
Thanks, Anthony. So yeah, technical part. So here you can see that in Power Query, since we had a lot of data sets, we had to organize somehow everything so that it's not kind of lost, and we know where we can find everything. So basically, straight away, we started with folders, and this is one of the best practices. I don't know if Christian is going to cover today later, but this is one of the best practices that we follow during our daily job with Power BI. We are creating these folders in order not to lose as kind of sense in all of these multiple tables. Of course, if you have just 3 tables, it maybe doesn't make sense, but when you start having more like 20, 50, hundreds, then there's no other choice, but you have to structure it somehow. So we created these folders for indicators that we were going to use, divided into subfolders. I'm going to talk about later. We also created a folder for dimensions. Then we also created some group for helper queries that we actually used in order to do some transformations. And as Anthony was saying, that we took these 26 indicators and we tried to categorize them all into different categories to be able to then evaluate countries in terms of different factors. So after the selection of the data set, we ended up with 3 categories, which was control, consequences, prevention, and then the main indicator of consumption. So here we also used multiple data sets. And we also had some other data sets that were not coming from GHO. Those were coming, one of the sources was Knowledge for Policy website. This was used to retrieve the amount of alcohol per drink. Then we also retrieved country population and death rates from the World Bank data. So as Anthony said, we had these 26 indicators, but the problem is that when you create an API call to the GHO, you need to have a code for your indicator. And to basically retrieve this code, we wrote a simple function here that basically if you copy some indicator and you paste it into this window, then another table will basically get this as parameter and retrieve the code, the indicator name, the language, the dimension, and basically dimension name. So we used this helpful function to compile and to prepare a list of indicators that we were going to use in our dashboard. And here the idea was that we prepare this list and then we display this list of sources at the last page here to kind of give the user the information about what we used as a source. And you can also see here that there is this column called last refresh. And for that, we also had to write a function because basically when you query the API, it retrieves all the columns that exist in a particular data set, and there are many. Then you have to choose, and then there are also columns. A column called date that is basically indicating when. Well, I'm not sure now if it is indeed indicating that, but we thought that it might indicate the last refresh date. So we wrote a function in Power Query that basically calls API, and then it does some transformation to retrieve the date. And what is great with OData, and what we discovered thanks to this championship as well, because personally at work I never use OData, is that it supports native queries. And once we discovered that, we tried to make sure that all our transformation are basically sent as native queries to directly to the API. And I will show later how it works. And this function is doing exactly the same. It's basically, it's not retrieving all the data for each indicator. It's applying the transformations that are then transformed into just one API call, and it's retrieving the date of the last refresh. Then what other challenges were here? So some of the indicators were basically the same, kind of in the meaning. So there were a list of indicators that were related to advertising restrictions. And those indicators were like advertising restrictions at point of sale, print media, billboards, etc. Essentially the same thing, but for different categorization. So for that, we just prepared these lists and basically called all of them in one single query, and in one single table, stored them in one single table. But then the challenge was, we did that for advertising restrictions and health warning labels. And then the challenge was that for some indicators, instead of numeric values, we had textual values. So to be able to kind of evaluate a country or give it a note, we had to transform this text into numbers. And we created also some additional helper, as you can see here, tables that would give a score to each of these different categories. And then we just simply merged and expanded. So quite straightforward. We also converted some country names because the map wasn't able to find some certain country names. I think it was from World Bank data, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, so basically we had to create that as well so that our map is actually able to recognize these countries, this list of countries. So that's, I think, pretty much it. I will just quickly show how it works with the native queries. So once basically this was done, then we had our data set prepared, and then we, let me just quickly run a refresh, and then I cancel it. Sorry. Just clean everything from here. And you can see, for example, I'm going to stop. With software, for example, we used Fiddler that allows us to monitor the web traffic and the requests sent by different applications. And you can see that, for example, for this indicator, it's 1743. So if I go here, alcohol attributable fractions, all cause deaths. So if I go back to Power Query, attributable death, I think it's this one. So you see, I have, like we have here, a lot of different transformation steps. And instead of instead of retrieving the whole data set from GHO, it's actually asking for just exactly what we need in our final data set. And this we found cool, that we are actually able to monitor these native queries sent to OData API, and that Power Query is able to handle this translation. And then what we also made sure to have is that once you publish the data set, is that it is straightforward configurable. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to publish quickly. So basically, the cool thing is that if you have this data set, you can publish it directly to your workspace. Then you just set up credentials in the settings. So this one just published. I'll probably, it will already be set up since we already have it. So here, what we do is just we use the anonymous credential authentication method, and then you just go and you click, and it's going to be refreshed. I will show you later, but before that, I show the model. So yeah, after importing all these tables, we basically created this beautiful model with all the different tables. Another best practice that I try to follow here, so that it's not a mess in your model, is I try to keep personally dimensions on top and then facts on the bottom. So you can see that it's not always the case. Sometimes it's better to change this, like a couple of tables for visibility. But you can see that here I have year dimension, country dimension, and I have all these facts below connected to that. And you can see that almost all of our fact tables are hidden because we created explicit measures for each of them. And then all the other information that these fact tables had were organized into dimensions. And this also is another best practice that we are following, is that here in the report view, we keep only what we need to build the report, and we don't need all the other technical or redundant information part there. And another, at this point, also when we created another best practice, when we created measures, we organized them into folders, and I think this is now basics. But yeah, we tried to keep that clean so that yeah, we don't lose. Again, having a lot of measures, it's quite complicated to navigate later, and this kind of helps us to go and see per category what kind of measures we have there. And I think it's ready, so we can go and see our data set refreshed within a couple of minutes. So it's good to go, and if there is new data coming from GHO, it will be there, so you can either schedule a refresh or just go yourself and click on it. Yeah. I think from my side on Power Query and data model, that's it, and I'll talk later about the DAX measures. So I give over to Anthony.
Yes, here I am. Okay, so I'm gonna quickly talk about the style of our dashboard. It's a bit funny because we our first idea was to do a dark themed dashboard, but we quickly realized that it was going to be not very readable. So on the white was a bit too boring. So Karim suggested to do some kind of like creamy color, like you can see here. And then Karim immediately thought about the Financial Times website. Maybe I can show you quickly some few comparison. So if I go on the website, I think we have it open here. Here it is. So the color, obviously we use the same color as them. I mean, if such a big newspaper chose those color, we saw that we couldn't go wrong by following them. So yeah, you can see this red here is the same as this one. You can see as well here that bar here is kind of like similar to the bar here about the region over the map. What else? I believe that if you enter in an article, oh, by the way, you can see the turquoise here is the same as the one we used here. You can see those codes over the title. We use that as well for our main title. Another similarity will be the side pane. We have that as well here. It's not exactly the same, but I mean, it's following the ID. I think that's it for the color. And yeah, as I said earlier, we were very excited about the use of a map. So I believe we actually have a map on every single page. So here you can see as well a map, as well here in the last page. You can see a map here. So yeah, we were very excited about the fact that we could finally work with a map. Talking about the map, actually, a few people reached to us to ask us how we did the map. So we basically just used the shape map visual. To have this visual available, I believe you just have to turn on the preview feature. And then you need to load into the visual a JSON file. Maybe if you're interested, we're gonna send you the link to the GitHub to find the JSON. I'll do that straight after. And yeah, this map is really interesting. There is a different style as well. I think few people used it as well during the Power BI Championship. But we wanted to have something very readable, so we kept the Mercator view. So yeah. As well, the map, we did some nice tooltips on them. You can see that if you fly over a country, the country is always represented in the background. Maybe I forgot to mention a bit earlier, but as well we wanted the whole thing to look kind of like a newspaper. Obviously, since we got the style from Financial Times. But you can see as well here some other notes that I forgot to mention, but like under every picture, there is a fig, kind of like what you will see in the newspaper. Something else that was important and actually a big part of the job that we had to do was to make the text that you can see always relevant. So for that, we actually abused a little bit the dynamic text value. Me, I never used it because I'm using a Power BI report server, but Karim was kind of like used to it, so he showed it to me, and that's something I learned as well. But like, for example, if you have nothing selected here, you can see the text is like on average a person has been consuming 5.9 liter. But now if you select a country, the text is updating and it's always relevant with what you've been selecting. And now if you're a bit sneaky and you select 2 countries as well, it's updating to show that it's from these 2 countries. So it's doing an average. If you select a region, it's as well the same ID, so it shows the region. But if you select 2 regions, you will have these 2 regions. So we kind of try to cover all the case that we may have, so it's always relevant. As well, the unit here are changing. We're going to show you the DAX in a minute, but if you select a small country, so let's say Switzerland, you can see that here it's been edited to show some different units depending of the value. So yeah, you can see as well that we used a conditional drill through here. So it's prompting you to select a country. And if you select a country, you can view more information about the country selected. So for example, here, France. On here as well, you can see that the text is always relevant with what you're looking at. So here, the text is France as a prevention score, etc., etc. So yeah, that was actually a lot of work to make sure that everything was always relevant. And we added some small touch. Like here, you can see that the favorite alcohol in France is actually the wine. Not a surprise, but yeah. So as well, we try to use as much as possible the basic visual that are included, and not to have too many custom visual. And I believe the only custom visual we have are the one to show the picture here. For the flag as well, we have a custom visual, and I believe we have a last one here for the rating system we did in Power Automate. Karim will go over it with you in a minute as well. Yeah, so for the style, I think that's it. We obviously we try to make it as clean as possible. The main page has only 3 numbers. We didn't want to overwhelm the people with too many graphs or too many metrics. And that was something important to us. And yeah, maybe the last thing is that we had a landing page just to bring the context when you reach on the dashboard, you know what we're gonna talk about. So yeah, I think that's it. And maybe Karim, you can talk now about the DAX.
Yeah, I hope you're still all right and it's not too boring. But yeah, so as I said earlier, we created these explicit measures for almost everything, and in the majority of these measures are actually quite straightforward. It's either average or sum x or some divide. Yeah, but we at the same time we had some measures that were several lines of code, and yeah, here what I another best practice from our side. But if you have a lot of code inside your measure, I suggest that you start, if you are not already using the DAX formatter. For me, I am not using it now because my hands are just typing automatically all these indentations, spaces, etc. But to start with clean code so that other people also understand it if necessary, and you, after I don't know several months of not working on some particular report, if you come back, then it's much easier to understand what you wrote if the code is clean. And I'm trying to promote this text formatter, and I see people still writing this everything in 3 lines of code, but like imagine all this code in 3 lines, then you will barely understand anything. So yeah, I suggest that you get this habitude early. So habit. What is else interesting about DAX measures? So as Anthony said, we used quite a lot this text, how's it called?
Dynamic.
Text box, yeah. And for that, we had to play sometimes with formats because, yeah, if you show some, like if you assign a format by default in some countries, basically where there is like no consumers, it will be showing like 0 billion, which doesn't make sense. So we also had to spend some time to make sure that all the formats and changing of numbers and filters are working well. So we created that for these formatting things. Then also what I want to show is the use of variables is another best practice. Sorry, like a lot of best practice from our side. But if you have also a lot of lines of code, and sometimes your calculations are repeating themselves, it's better to start using variables because not only it's also cleaner look for your measures and columns, but also sometimes it's impacting performance in a good way, so that instead of calculating something multiple times, you are just calculating it once. And then you are using it. But here you have to pay attention because once you record some calculation into this variable, it cannot be recalculated with all this calculate, all except, etc., all the context modifiers. And yeah, you have to pay attention at the same time and not put everything into variables. Otherwise, it won't work. Then also, as Anthony showed here, we have this last page where we have some, again, dynamic text values. But basically what we did is, yeah, I showed this measure before, is we are showing, once the user is changing a parameter, we are showing here a different title. And for that title, we also created a dynamic measure where we are basically comparing the user's consumption to the to other countries, and we are finding the country that is the closest but consumes less, and then we are highlighting it that, for example, you are drinking more than the average person in that particular country, and we add that and X other countries at the end. So that's kind of for the user, it's quite clean and clear when he tries to compare himself, like how he compares to others. So yeah, this part about what if parameters, I think Anthony will cover about this binge drinking. But otherwise, yeah, so from DAX perspective, there wasn't something really exceptional or really complicated, since the dashboard was quite straightforward. Then we had another challenge. So basically with this, Anthony showed you this conditional drill through. The problem was that once you drill through, then basically all other countries, they just disappear from the context. And the problem was that if you filter with your dimension all other facts, then basically the only values that exist in these facts is related to the country that you filtered through. Of course, in the calculation, you can remove this filter context, but if you want to display the values that are basically non-existent for Power BI after the filter was applied, then you kind of have a problem because you will not be able to remove that. And for that, we just use this workaround of a second dimension, which we call the country filter. Yeah, looking back at it now, it doesn't make sense, the name, but anyway. And basically, we are using that dimension to show other countries on this graph so that we are able to highlight where, for example, France is compared to others. But then by just simply adding this second dimension, you will not get rid of this issue of drill-through, because if you don't remove this, basically the only way to remove this context of this dimension is to remove these relationships, and that you can do either with some use relationship and cross filter functions in DAX for every measure that you want to use, or you can create a calculation group, which we did gladly. And here we basically created a calculation group where we defined what kind of relationships we want to remove so that our visual works. And here it's again quite straightforward. So we are basically doing a calculate where we are removing all the unnecessary relationships. And then when we are applying this calculation group to this graph, basically we receive this drill-through filter as a kind of selected value kind of filter. So for example, to highlight this in red here, we created also a measure that is basically saying that if your country from this second dimension is equal to the country, yeah, here it doesn't make sense, sorry, it's was written under pressure. But yeah, if this country coming from the second dimension is equal to the country that is filtered by the initial or main dimension, then we are basically saying that it's going to be colored red. Otherwise, we just keep the default color. And we did the same for the size. So basically, if the country is the one that we filtered with drill-through, then we are just kind of showing it 10 times bigger than the other one. So that was one trick that we had to use to be able to show that, and also then to use in the country comparison where we can independently choose different countries and compare them, and all this is just, yeah, apparently Bahrain is not on the map anyway. And yeah, this second dimension helped us a lot here. So then we also had to create, well, again, it was all about these small touches that were highlighting something important. And then here we had to also highlight the first value and the last value so that the reader basically can see what happened over the course of 20 years and if the consumption has reduced or increased. So this was also done with a couple of additional measures where we're basically finding the first year with the data, and then we are showing the value for that first year, and for everything else is basically blank. Yeah, we also had to create a measure for the image. I think it was also quite straightforward. I saw some cases when I think it was a group where people were naming all the visuals. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to do that, so it's a bit of a mess. But yeah, here we have the most consumed beverage image where we are also retrieving the I think it was beverage type image. Yeah, so this base 64 binary for the image to be able to use it here in this visual. So yeah, I think I give a word to Anthony for this what if parameter part.
Thank you, Karim. Yeah, so we not so many people knows how much they are drinking, and we wanted to add a little bit of interactivity in a fun and in especially specifically in a meaningful way. So we wanted to use the what if parameters for that. Here, you can select the country where you're coming from, and you can select how much you are drinking. So, for example, for myself, I'm quite a heavy drinker, especially on the weekend. So when I'm selecting how much I'm drinking, it's calculating with the measure that Karim, some of the measure that Karim showed you just before, how much I am drinking myself per year. So we wanted as well to show how much that represents in terms of calorie, but then the calorie is not really talking to us. So we converted that into a cheeseburger metric. Even though I'm drinking quite a lot, I'm still drinking 26% less than people in Switzerland on average. And here, again, the use of a map. The countries that are highlighted are the countries that are drinking less than me. So if I'm increasing maybe my consumption, you can see that more countries will be highlighted. Anyway, Karim, I think, showed the measure to have this title here. So again, coming back to what I said before, but we try to make it relevant. So the text is always dynamic. You can see as well that this part here is invisible, and as soon as you start saying that you're drinking, it prompts you to be careful about binge drinking. And here you can learn more about binge drinking, and there is a little bit of educational material. If we had more time, I believe that we would have tried to add a little bit more content here for that part. For example, we were thinking about adding a link to the closest Alcoholic Anonymous club, or I don't know what it's called, but the closest to you based on your location. Or we would have tried to do some other fun stuff. With the limited time, we just couldn't we just couldn't make it. But one more thing that we did was the Power Automate, and I will let Karim explain that.
Okay, so on the last page, we tried to add some wow feature, so to say, to please the jury and to get some additional points for our solution. So we decided to just give this give a try to this Power Automate visual that is available in Power BI since I don't know how much time, but quite for some time. And we implemented this rating system where you can basically go to the last page and you can use this slider to select how many stars you would give to our report, and then click on rate, and then basically that will send this number of stars to an Excel file, which is stored on OneDrive. And then using this file, we could potentially create a report or some other notification saying that yeah, the ratings are getting better or worse, and yeah, basically allows us to improve our report later. And just to show you how it works, so if I go to this last page and I put some, I don't know, 3 stars, it's triggering. It's saying that it's triggered. And now if I go to the, yeah, you see, the values that I've just entered appeared here in the Excel file stored on the OneDrive. And yeah, here it's 2 something something, so 2.6. And this is how it looks in the background. So basically there is a trigger on Power BI button clicked, and then there is some action. It's pretty straightforward. It was quite like one of the easiest things that we could do for the limited time that we had at the end for the bonus features. But yeah, it's basically adding a new row into a table. It's taking the rating value. We created a measure for this rating value, and it's taking it into column scores, and it's adding a timestamp, which is yeah, a formula to get the current timestamp. Yeah, and that's why that was quite cool. Yeah, that you can interact from Power BI. You can write back somewhere, either on the database or an Excel file, and then do something with this backwritten data. Yeah, I think Anthony didn't talk about it, but at the very end we include this resource page where we organized, as I showed before, our indicators to give some background information to our users. And we mentioned our different inspirations and sources that were used to build this report. We put educational information, icons and images, inspirations, of course, Financial Times. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Here's a small page for tooltip, which is, yeah, Anthony showed it too. So yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. So if you have any questions, feel free. Otherwise, it's been a pleasure to present and show our solution to you.
Very cool. Thank you very much, Anthony and Karim. Any questions from the audience? I don't see anything in the chat. I must say and admit you really structured it well, your whole approach, the whole process. You really went into the details how you started and how you build it. So really, really nice.
Christian,
I think there's
Oh,
think
yeah,
there's one
there is
hand
one.
up.
I am
Thanks.
Luis. Thank you, Karim. Thank you, Anthony. Great presentation and great work. I'm very curious in terms of how did you split a little bit of the effort because of the let's say time constraints and work constraints. In terms of the, let's say, breaking it down, how hard was it for you to define what you wanted to do, and how hard was it for you to kind of then implement it to get this solution? How was the split of the effort and the amount of effort that, how would you break it down?
Yeah, I let Anthony to.
So yeah, so I took a day off, and I believe Karim took 2. Yeah, it's kind of hard to work at 2 on a single PBIX file. And yeah, we tried to split the effort. So Karim did quite a lot of the technical part. He's much more experienced than me. So I think for the complicated measure, I'm able to make them as well, but Karim can make them twice faster. So he made sure to handle that part. So, for example, one of us was working on the design, looking for the nice image or some inspiration, or we were trying to do some proof of concept. For example, I was on another computer doing a proof of concept of a graph that we wanted to implement, while Karim was doing something else. It was a challenge, and I believe that we spent 5 days almost all the time together. We spent it was a long weekend, so we spent the whole 3 days together from like 10 a.m. till midnight every day, I believe. I don't know, Karim, if you want to add something.
It was funny because we never worked with Anthony together, like on some common project. And it was also a challenge from like a personal perspective, so that because when someone proposes some idea, then you kind of each of us were like challenging it, asking questions or doubting something, and in that sense it was quite helpful that, for example, when I was busy or if I was working, then Anthony did some kind of concepts for, yes, as he said, design, colors. And then he was basically sending me via WhatsApp, or then in the evening we were checking together, and then we were trying to brainstorm. And then I had some idea, and then I'm trying to kind of change the colors. And I think Anthony didn't mention it, but there was a situation when I had an idea. I spent, I think, 1 or 2 hours just to make it real. And then at the end I said, "Ah, no, it's not interesting." And basically it was like 2 hours lost. And yeah, but otherwise, yeah, it's quite challenging if you're working on one file and then you clearly have to define who does what. And unfortunately, you can't really edit the Power Query at the same time. So we had to publish, then Anthony downloaded it, then he copy pasted the visuals. But I would say that once the Power Query part was done, it was quite, I would say it was a bit easier because then we could work on different pages and we didn't touch the data set anymore. So yeah, something like that.
Thank you very much. No, very educational. Thank you.
Any further questions? Now's your chance. All right, doesn't look like. I don't see any. Oh, here we have one more. Yes, please.
Yeah, sorry. My question here for you is, in total, how much time did you take to, do this massive job? I think it's done beautifully. Were you able to keep a count of time and days or hours or months? I don't know.
Let me try if I'm able to go back to this. Christian, can you remind me? Was it like the kickoff was 2nd, I think, right?
Yeah, we had 5 days. 2nd was kickoff,
So,
and
yeah.
due date was 7th.
Yeah. So on the 2nd, we went to the Microsoft office for the kickoff, and then I think we spent almost a day to kind of finalize the subject that we wanted to deliver in the end. And we had different ideas. As Anthony said, at first we were like, yeah, rental data set, we should go for it. And then once we opened it, we were less excited. And then Anthony started suggesting other topics from WHO, like we were considering women violence or violence against women. Different things. Yeah, we started with that. Then we saw that there was no data, and basically the whole 2nd of June was lost, or well, not lost, but was spent on selecting the subject. And then, as Anthony said, I took the day off on the 3rd and 2nd, 3rd, and 7th. And then that was basically almost non-stop. I think we woke up at 9 and worked, me personally, until 2. And Anthony was able to join once he finished the work. And yeah, if you count 9 to 6, 10 hours per day or something like that. So yeah, quite a lot.
All right. Any further questions?
Yeah, I have a question. If I may, here's Olga. Like I don't use a lot of maps in my dashboard, so I have a bare minimum knowledge about that. And most of the dashboards during the challenge use different approaches to those maps. You mentioned this JSON file. Is it something that you create yourself, or you find it somewhere in GitHubs and stuff? Like what would be the approach to create something meaningful like with the map when you want to have something interactive?
So I just sent in the chat the link to the GitHub that contains the JSON file.
Is it something that I have to have knowledge for to create that file, or it's the commonly accessible thing?
Karim, maybe you can show
it
quickly.
Mm-hmm.
It's not complicated at all. So basically, you download the JSON. I think for us, did you click? It's in the chat. Yeah. oh yeah, you take it raw. So basically you copy what you see here. You just copy it. You create a text file on your desktop and you name it as you want, and you paste that in it, and you just use the .json at the end. So the file will be considered as a JSON, and then you open it in the shape map visual.
But where did you get it in the first place? Like, where did you find something like that?
In that GitHub.
Okay, so it's
So,
by someone else.
It was coincidental because we just Googled. We wanted to see like different options of maps, since we are, as Anthony said, we are never using it at work, almost never, and we wanted to find some nice map and to see some examples that someone implemented already in their Power BI reports. And then there was, as usual, this community Power BI website where someone mentioned this GitHub. And then we went there, we downloaded the JSON and imported it. But I think, yeah, someone basically had to create it. As you can see, it's just a pure JSON. They mentioned, they put all the points,
Coordinates and stuff.
Borders, yeah, and the country names. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any further questions? All right, looks like we really have covered all questions. Thank you very, very much one more time to sharing all these great insights, the best practices, your approach and everything. So for next year, you know, guys, this is the bare minimum you have to do. No, obviously, just kidding. We have more or less half hour left. Let's then head over, give me one more time, one more second to share my screen. As promised, we're going to cover in the next half hour just best practices, tips and tricks from Dennis and myself. Just a quick overview. Dennis will cover more or less the best or the basic data modeling stuff. I will do a little bit best practices in general and visualization. I think it's best. Dennis, would you like to share your screen and go through?
Sure, I can do that. Give me a second. Now, as we have limited time, I will hurry up a little. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes, here it is.
All right, perfect. Let me take this to the other screen. I will cover a little bit the basics about data modeling. I talked a little with Christian, and also in the last 1-2 weeks, I got a few examples where the data model was not really clear, and there was no really differentiation between fact and dimensional tables. So we discussed and decided that we will go through the basics again. So in general, the question is, why would you use fact and dimensional tables, and what is this even? In general, it's data modeling. In general, our databases, transactional databases like OLTP databases, they're made for single transactions. This means when I buy something in an online store, there's one new entry being entered in the database, and it's row-based. This makes also sense because I want to somehow abstract and see one new buy or sell in the database. And it's row-based, as I already said, and it's reducing redundancies. You do a normalization, so or denormalization, so you have multiple tables that are related. A normal transactional database would look something like this. And this is also totally fine if you have a productive environment and you want to enter data and really work with the stuff, but it's really bad for analyzing. So for example, let's say we want to analyze by product, what is here on the top left corner, and by country, what is here down right. Then somehow I have to do the connection between these two tables. So if I want that, I have to, somehow the data has to take a path. So probably has to go from here up, more up to this table, location table, to the warehouse, inventory, and then somehow I end up at the product. And the same if I want to analyze any kind of other data. It's getting really, really complicated. And this is really not good for analyzing because the ways are way too long and it's very complicated. For that reason, you do a different approach with BI systems and also with Power BI. You split the data into fact and dimensional tables. This is the ideal solution in a case like this. You have in the middle, you have a fact table. All your facts are in here, every sale, and everything around is like kind of master data. It's these are the dimensions. For example, you talk about products, or you talk about a day, a year, a month. This is in the calendar, or you want to analyze by a customer. What is happening then that all the dimensions are filtering the facts? For example, I want to filter for black bikes and for customers in Switzerland. So I can filter both tables, and at the end, I get a sales table that only contains the data of black bikes from customers in Switzerland. And when I filter the sales table, it's very easy to analyze because I only have to do a few calculations on an already filtered table, and very easily I can get my result. This thing here in the middle, as I said, is a fact table. The other ones around are dimensional tables. And this whole schema is called a star schema because it looks with a little fantasy kind of like a star. Let's do a definition. Dimensional tables, as I said, are more or less master data. So every entry is once there. If you, for example, take a product dimensional table, you do for every physical product one row. Of course, a row can have multiple sales, but they are in the fact table then. They are, as I said, unique rows like products, a city, or a customer. And they're usually kind of wide. So a product can have a color, a length, a width, a height, a weight. It can have a warehouse where it's storing and so on. The table can be quite wide, but it's not very long as you have every product only once in this table. In addition to this, you have the fact tables, and the fact tables are always associated with numbers. So every sale, the amount of products sold, the amount of orders. So every time something happens, like someone is selling something, you add this as a fact to the fact table. These facts are then linked to the dimensions. For example, I will do an example in a minute, but for example, the products would be linked to a fact or a date where a customer is buying a specific product. And these tables are usually pretty long because every sale will be added to this table. An example would be something like here. This would be the fact table. An idea fact table only has the measures, like units sold, and the rest of it are then IDs. In my case, I have a date ID, a product ID, and a customer ID. What's happening then is, for example, I can connect it with a date table, the dimensional table. I can connect it with my customer table, and I can connect it with my product table. And usually these tables have a filter direction. It's usually one to many, from outside to inside. What means every entry here only exists once in the dimensional table, but can exist many times in my fact table. And if I want to analyze, I can do that easily. I can just, for example, filter this table for bikes that are black. What means this row and the next row would be deleted. This table is filtering the fact table. And at the end, in the fact table, I have only the rows left that contain black bikes. If, for example, then I want to filter for Switzerland, in addition, I filter this table to all the customers from Germany, from Switzerland. This is in addition filtering this table. And at the end, my fact table only contains black bikes from people bought from Switzerland. This is the way the whole system for business intelligence system works. What happens if I have a more complex scenario? For example, here we also have in the middle our fact table. We have our product, oops, that was wrong way. Our product table is connected and our date table is connected, as well as our customers. But for example, the customers is filtered by geography and the geography is filtered by a continent. This is also possible. It makes everything a little more difficult, as if I want to, for example, analyze the products by country, I would have to, depending what I do exactly, I would have to change the filter direction. So then I have to use DAX to get a proper result. This whole system is called a snowflake because it looks more like a snowflake than a star. It also works, but probably sometimes I have to work a little more with DAX to get the result I want. This is the theory. Now I will show you the whole thing in practice. This here is a proper start schema. I have the measure table I will put aside. So we have in the middle our sales. On the side, we have our customer, store, date, and product. And as I described right now, I can filter for date, store, customer, or product. I think this should not be so difficult. I hope this is more or less clear. If you have questions, just ask me. Otherwise, usually there is the question, how will I behave? How will it work if I have two fact tables? One fact table is the standard, but what do I do with two fact tables? For this, I prepared another fact table. I don't have only my sales. I also have the sales in the store. So it's like a physical table from the stores. I can also load this to my data model, and then I would have two fact tables.
Dennis, we have a question.
Yes, please.
So feel free. Oh, it looks like it was just a mistake. I saw hand raise. So, okay, no questions. Sorry.
You have a question? Or?
No, the hand was raised. Now it's down again. No question at all. Sorry. Keep moving.
Okay. No problem. So now I load. This is the whenever you want to show something, it takes pretty long. I add a second fact table, and the question is, how do I do that? How can I analyze two fact tables at the same time? At the end, it's more or less the same principle. Let's quickly wait until this fact table is added. But what you do now is you analyze both of the fact tables the same way. So you can, to show again this example, I can not only connect the the dimensional tables only to one table, I can also connect them to multiple tables. So if at one point our sales table will be loaded, I think this should happen soon. A few files he found still. What you do then is you just connect your dimension to the second sales table as well. Second fact table. Power BI is already doing this kind of automatically. The only thing is the date is not really taken, so I can just connect also the date dimension to this table. And in this case, I have two fact tables. One is the sales table and one is the sales store table. And both of them have connection from all the other dimensional tables. So I can filter by store. And now the really nice thing is if, for example, I would filter by store, both of the fact tables would be filtered by store. If I would filter for a product, for example, black bikes, both fact tables are filtered for black bikes. And this means whatever I analyze, I still analyze the same thing. The user usually doesn't even know, or he doesn't really have to care that the data is coming from two different fact tables. Like this, I can just integrate that and make one nice data model with multiple fact tables. Also a little tip, what I do usually is on one side, I put then my fact tables, and on one side, I put my dimensional tables. And like this, it's a little easier to recognize. Here we see the many side, and on the other side, we see the one side. It's easier to recognize which ones are fact and which ones are dimensional tables. that's a quick introduction about data modeling and best practice, because this question with 2 fact tables we have quite often. Now, as Christian mentioned, I wanted to show something else. What is the use of a fact table? In a case like this, I would have 2 fact tables, and to not confuse the users, because they don't really know from where do I have to take my measures. You usually anyway would write measures and you would put them into a measure table. A measure table you can just add by creating a new table. I will call it measure 2. At the beginning, it has 1 column, but the moment I create a measure, here we have it. It's empty. I cannot delete this column, but I could now create a new measure and say amount sales store would be count rows from the sales store table. The moment I create 1 measure, I can delete the other column, delete from model, and now I have, you will see the table will jump up. Now it automatically moves to the top of this list, and it also has a little bit of different symbol. It has the symbol of multiple measures, and the measure tables will always be at the top. And this table doesn't contain anything except for measures. I prepared that already. I have, for example, my sales and sales previous year, or my order and order from the previous year. And you can imagine the more measures I get, the more messy it's getting. So for this reason, another tip for the basics of data modeling is that you can organize these measures in folders. Now, how do you do that? You have to do this in the Model tab. You can go here to your measures, and here you have a display folder. So this means, for example, I can go to my order measure and want to put this in my orders folder. I just have to enter the name. So I see here my orders. The previous year I have to do the same. So I can just type the same name and I will have the measure in the same folder. I can also mark multiple measures and enter here the name for the folder. Like this, I can create a hierarchy in the corresponding table, and now I have different folders. Folders don't only have to be one-dimensional. This means I can also put folders in other folders. Let's say we would like to put orders and sales in another folder that has a subfolder. I could say I want this in orders and sales. I'm not sure if I can do back spaces. Let's try it out. This works. And I can do the same with my sales measures, and can also put it in orders and sales /sales. And when I release the button, I have now a folder structure of multiple folders. Now, last tip about that. If, for example, I want to have my actual and my previous year measures in another folder, I can also use multiple folders. I can separate them with a semicolon. So if I take here orders and sales orders, orders is one folder, but I also want to have the measure in a folder called actual. I just, maybe you can see it, can put a semicolon here. And when I press enter, there's another folder created. I can do the same for my other measure. Can say actual, and can do the same for this measure. Can say previous year. Copy that and do the same for my sales previous year. And now I have my measures in multiple folders. So in my previous year folder, I have my previous year measures, and you can already see I can mark it, and it's marking both of the measures in all folders. Like this, you can organize your measures very well, especially if you have multiple or many measures. You can organize them in folders. This, by the way, is not only limited to measures. You can also do this with columns. So you could mark all of them and can also say this is in the folder calendar. And then you would have a folder for your columns in your table for the columns. This you can then use also here. So if you have any measures, you can put them here. If you have, for example, also folders, you did folders for your columns, you can also use them in the front end, how you usually would. Let's see if I forgot anything. I think that was everything I wanted to show and did it in 16 minutes. Are there any questions?
I don't see anything in the chat. No, one hand is raised. Yes, please.
Yeah.
Just unmute yourself and raise your question, LQ.
Sorry. Hi, Daniel. Thank you very much. It's a bit of an advanced question, and
yeah, sure.
You decide if it fits on the. So it's about to be temporal tables, and when we have multiple data tables. And do you have a best practice for that? Recommendation.
Multiple date tables, you mean?
Yes. Let's say if you want to basically see when you did the sale and when you reported the sale.
Yeah, this is that's also possible.
It's just about the best practices. If you have some recommendations.
Yeah, best practice is usually that you use a DAX function. So, for example, we have here the date table. It's just a calendar, and at the sales table you have multiple dates. For example, delivery date, due date. In our case, we used here order date key. And if, for example, I want to see my data by delivery date, I can do a second connection. Usually tables can only have one active connection. But if you want to switch this, you have to have an inactive connection. So one is normal and one is dotted. And if you do a double click, you will see that the dotted one here is not active. So here, make this relationship active is grayed out, or not grayed out, deactivated. And the other relationship here is active. So the make this relationship active is active. What you want to do now, in one case, you want to get the data by your order date, and at one point you want to get the data by delivery date. This you can easily do in the front end. So you can go here, and let's do the we have the normal sales, the orders you didn't delete, and you can do a new measure and change the relationship within the measure. So you can say sales delivery date, or let's say sales by delivery date. Then you use calculate to change the filter context. What you want is your sales measure, but you want to change, no, this was wrong. You want to change the relationship. So you want to say use relationship. And in this case, we want the relationship between date and sales. What did we say?
I think you took the delivery key date.
Delivery date key, huh?
Date
and
key, yeah.
Was it the date key? I think it was the date key and the delivery date key. And in this case, we one bracket was missing. Yes. Give me a second.
I think in the relationship you took the date and the date key, so that's probably.
Yes, this is absolutely wrong. So it has to be the date key and the delivery date key. Thank you very much, Christian.
Sure.
And then the measure, always here for me. Then you can add this the measure here, and you already see in 2010. So the total is exactly the same, but you see a shift in time. So you have a delivery in 2010, but no order. What means, yeah, it worked. You used a different date, and you should also see a shift here. Let's remove the quarter maybe. You should see a shift here in the dates as well. So for example, here people ordered for 660,000 francs or whatever, and it was delivered for 900,000 francs. In the next month, it was again ordered for 600, but delivered for 500,000 francs. So here we switched only the relationship, and like this with one date dimension, we can, with the measure and the use relationship, we can handle both cases or many more. Does this work? Is this did this
Yes, thank
answer
you.
the question?
Thank you for the insights.
Oh,
Thank you very much.
you're welcome. Are there any other questions? No, then I would hand over to Christian.
Right. Looking a little bit at the time, I would suggest following. Instead of somehow going through all the content and make it in 5 minutes, I would suggest I will just take one, the visualization part, and the best practices of the other stuff, we will keep that for the next time. If I'm not wrong, Dennis, we still have some time next time, so we can still do a best practice session and cover that a little bit in more detail. So let me therefore go to this thing over here. Best practice about visualization. I saw a lot of visualization, obviously, during the championship. Mostly it was, let's say, similar, using similar visuals, bar charts or whatever. But sometimes it's not always the best way of visualizing your data in a report. And especially what I mean is this thing. When should I use pie charts? Because I see a lot of people are using them, but most of them are not really, let's say, nice, appropriate. And before I answer it, there is one really good visual vocabulary report available through this link, which gives you insights on how you can display data in the meaning of the data. So if you have a distribution, if you have something, a time series, if you have a comparison, stuff like that, you can go check this report out, and it will show you which visual would be the best to show your data. Coming back to the when should I use a pie chart, my default answer is following: never, and really never. And the test is following. I will show you quickly, really in just 3 seconds, a visual which is a pie chart. And I challenge you to tell me within these 3 seconds which letter has the biggest weight. The letter is the category of the pie at the end. Ready? Let's go for it. Okay?
C.
Really hard to tell. To be honest, or to be fair, it was only categories, and the labels have been missing. And I heard C. I think. Let me see if you still stick with C. If I go further and say make it fair and add the values to each label, but because you know now a little bit the visual, let's reduce the seconds, and only in 2 seconds I wish to have an answer. So was it C?
I don't know.
Let me do that same. Absolutely the same data, but instead of a pie chart, let's just use a bar chart. Okay? One more time, 3 seconds.
C.
Yeah. And you see, even with the same data, just by visualizing it in a different way, it's much more readable in a quicker way for humans or us as human beings. And this is the key takeaway. I mean, if I'm gonna choose a bar chart, the bar chart don't even need to be in the right order by value to really extract on a quick way which is the biggest bar in this case. And this is really hard to do with a pie chart, especially if you do a little bit of rotation or if you do not include the labels. It's really hard and you need more time to extract information and to really understand the information. And therefore, that's the reason why I tell everybody, when should you use a pie chart? The answer is never. Only there is really one case I came so far is if you use pie charts as a workaround, meaning to show like an ample, to show like an indicator status, but then it has to be a full pie, meaning if it's red, it's good, bad. If it's green, it's good. So you're not splitting the pie. It's really just a 100% thing, and then you're showing like statuses. This is one of the only things that I can imagine where a pie chart is really useful. As
Christian,
mentioned, yes, please.
I have just one comment. If you want to show something as part of the whole, which visual would you like to do?
As part of the whole. Very good. Look, if you go back, there is one cool thing. If you go here to the link, there we are. This is the report I mentioned. And on the first site, once loaded, you have here deviation, correlation, ranking, distribution, change over time, parts to whole. So let's click it. And each time you can see this is the stacked column, which is like the first choice in this case. And you always have a little bit of a description why you should use it or why is it so simple to use it. And in my case, if I would show something apart as a whole, I would go with a stacked column or a stacked bar chart. When should I use which one? Stacked column, I would choose if you have a date on the x-axis. If you have a category and no date, I would go for the stacked bar. So that's the categories over here. Okay. I see the donut chart here. I see sunburst and so on. One more time, I'm no fan of such kind because the donut and the pie chart is the same for me in the donut chart. Okay, I agree. You can have a little bit more infos within or in the middle of the donut chart, but still, how much is this? I have no clue. Is this more than this one? Is it equal? I really don't know. And within here, it's easy to see. Okay, it's a little bit comparing to 2015 with 2016. I see the first bit is a little bit more in the 2016.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. But yeah, essentially, I think there are not so many visuals that are readable if you want to show something.
Yeah. All right. Any further questions? All right. And as you see, especially for comparing to whole, it's also always depending on what kind of data. We have waterfall and grid plot and so on. But as mentioned, it's a really good repo from my point of view. If I go one more time back to the first page, you can always just select what do you wish and say, okay, let's say correlation, and you will always have some kind of visuals which would make sense in a correlation way. All right. As promised, this was it. Not gonna cover all the rest. We can do that the next time. As usual in the closing, a reminder for the next meetup will be on the 1st of September. It will be online this time. Unfortunately, we cannot do it hybrid. I tried to get the room, but didn't work out. So therefore, we have to make it online. Our first hybrid meeting will be in December. So this is mark it if you wish to join us in person in the circle. Will be, what is it? I think 2nd of December. It's just the first Thursday of December, obviously. And for the 1st of September, we will have Pascal. He was 3rd on the championship. He will also talk a little bit about his road to success so that we get a little bit more insights or different insights to see what kind of path he followed. And we're still looking for a new speaker or for another speaker. Probably we do again a best practice session to cover some other best practices which we didn't cover today. And useful links as usual in the slides. You can go check them out. And with that, thank you very much from Dennis, I guess, and my side as well. I can stay for the next few minutes. If you have any kind of questions, feel free to raise them. Doesn't need to be in today's topics. It could also be anything else. So let's do a ask me anything session in the upcoming minutes.
Thank you for this wonderful presentation, guys. Just a quick thing, I can't see chat. I know you have shared some links as well and the previous presenter, but I can't see any chat in my Teams.
This could be due to your tenant policy. I checked that with my Teams colleagues, and the thing is, if I invite you to the Teams in Microsoft, all policies are open that the guest users can see chats and so on. And it's proven because, for example, Dennis can see it. I saw Anthony and Karim and so on. They could also chat. If you do not see it, it's the tenant settings of your Microsoft tenant, your my Teams tenant, sorry.
I mean, I can see all of the chats and everything since morning, just not this only. So not sure about that.
Yep, you would need to make a federation. This is called federation from your Teams tenant to the Microsoft tenant, allowing the chatting between those two.
Right. Okay. But does this impact only onto this chat? Because all of the ones I can see, there's a chat in all of the meetings since morning. Just only this one doesn't have a chat window. So I'm not too sure that is that, but I will double check that as well.
Yeah. That would be great. Yeah, because I really checked it. I got this question a lot, and I checked internally, and this is the answer I got from the Teams specialists.
Wonderful. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you.
Sure. Welcome. I see, Fred, you have your hand raised.
Will you share the link to the visuals?
Yeah, sure. You can find it. You can. Where is it? Here. In the slide, or I can also copy the link quickly and put it into the chat, so you have it directly. There you go.
Well, is it the same link which is from the community you just showed a little earlier with a different type of charts and graphs?
Yes, this link it's opening up. Where is it? Okay, let me open it one more time. It's opening exactly this report that I just showed with the different kind of visuals and so on.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Any further questions? Oh, I see I haven't turned on my camera. Here you are.
Thanks, Christian. Appreciate it.
Sure. Very welcome.
I have a question not related to what you've presented, but to the data marts, since we advertised it so much and like we started using that. Have you ever run into the problem of date conversion? Like, is it because we are sitting in Switzerland using data models like German data models, or because from several team members and myself included, that's the problem that prevents us from using the data mart.
Okay, so meaning you connect like to I don't know, to something that is date conversion German, and if you connect to it, do you get an error during import?
So it always throws an error. So I created the data flows. It works fine with the data flows. As soon as I start adding those data flows to data mart, it just throws me the error that there is a problem with the table, exactly where the date sits. And from whatever we investigated, that's the date-related problem. So just for you, like to ponder, maybe you would try to simulate or see whether some responses regarding that coming to you as a feedback. I could give you more details, maybe like if I take a fresh look at what I had, like generally, but it's like several people reporting one and the same thing.
Best would be if you open a support ticket and also report this through the Power BI Ideas website, because I haven't heard it so far. Not sure if my customers don't use it or they just don't approach me. But this is the best way. So making PG product group aware of the issue.
Okay.
I probably have probably a reason why it could be. Can I show you? So if it's coming from a database, then usually, Power BI knows and can convert the date when it's coming from a flat file like a text. Power BI doesn't is taking the local settings. So for you, Swiss, for some people, it takes the Swiss format, and for some the US format. So what you can do before it's converting it to a date and it's doing it wrong, you could go to Power Query and you could say transform. Now I have to find it first. No, it's change date somewhere, change type, and then you can say using local.
Okay.
So you can say in the source, it's, I don't know, a Swiss or American format or whatever. And then you can, for example, it's a date, but in Swiss format. And then it doesn't matter what you're using. It's always, it always thinks it's coming in a Swiss format. Or you can say it's English and from the United States. And then, for example, it would expect a date in this format. And like this, you it always makes sure.
But it's like in the basic, like when you're working with Power BI, that works. I would have expected that if in data flow, it doesn't throw any problems, so the conversion happens well.
Yeah.
Why would it complain in data mart? Like the data flows, they run perfectly. So once you just add them or you add directly, like to the data mart without data flows, that's all the same problem.
No, I agree. It's just that whenever I had similar issues, I could usually solve it with a change type with local. And
I'm going to try that out. I'm going to try that out with the data mart to see whether that works like more, because I'm sure we've already tried with Alex, like all the different things. But anyways, okay, that's a good tip. I'll check it out before I start writing regarding this. But I was just curious whether you've received any feedback like similar to this.
और तो कोई मैसेज क्या करना है बेटे आप चलो लेट्स गो आप चलते हैं लेकिन आप बोलोगे नहीं मैं बाहर नहीं छोड़ के जा रहा हूं क्यों हमने तो जाना पड़ेगा आपको.
So now I just checked the data mart and it's available. I wasn't sure if it is, but if you just click here on ABC on the data type, you can go using local. There you are, and then you can say which local you wish to convert. So this could be a way then to solve. Yes.
Okay, good. I'll try it out. Let you know, guys.
Yeah, good.
Interesting. Because I'm using success factors like directly, and like I'm building the data flows based off that. And there's of course it comes in the JSON format, and I convert it to the normal like date from the JSON format from success factors. And I don't know, like maybe that's the problem. That's what I thought originally because we're using the date function for this. But like, okay.
But nevertheless, report it because I would also expect if it goes in a data flow, it should also work in the data mart.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Christian?
Anything else? Yes, please.
I have a quick question. We've been waiting for a feature called multiple apps from the same workspace for quite some time. As a Microsoft employee, do you have some insights? If there are some tests going on, or
wait a second, did it record it? Let me think. Yes, I do have some insights. What I can share is, I think it's even on the roadmap. We do have some plans to bring, I wouldn't say one to multiple apps, because as far as I see, the feature which will come is that you still have just one app per workspace, but in the app itself, yes, you have different permissions, and then you can fine granular or fine tune who can see what. This is, I think, the way that we go. But as far as I see, we do not have anything which will give you the possibility of creating multiple apps per one workspace.
But that works as well, I think, because we can define the rights. And it's just that it was expected, I think, in May or something like that. Then it was pushed.
Yeah, we shipped that. Yes, we shipped that. So
it's postponed, as Christian mentioned in the roadmap. It's not postponed to September, they said.
Yeah.
So I think it's not ready yet.
Could be. Is it in the release? Do we have already a 2?
In the in the ideas, in the roadmap it is, and in the ideas also the comment was changed to it's now in September. They wanted to release it in July.
Okay, what's even planned? Let's see. Okay, I can't find it that quickly, but okay, if you say September, I'm gonna believe you for once, Dennis. All right. Anything else? Any other questions? Calling it once. Calling it twice. Calling it 3 times. So it doesn't look like. With that, one more time, thank you very much for attending. Really great to have you all, especially for the 2 speakers of today, Karim and Anthony. Thanks very much for all your insights. And I hope to see you next month again and wish you a nice evening. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.